Jagger. And it's a flagship show time. It's Unlock the Middle's flagship show time where we come together, we bring them tools, sharpen them up, and we prepare for an awesome week of success. Coming up with our students, Josh Dowad, proud principal of Memorial Pathway Academy and Garland ISD, Garland, USA, ready to rock and roll with an awesome speaker, awesome author, ready to bring those tools, put them lay out in front because you know what? Our kids are different little puzzles and we need little tools to get that connection going. So if you are in Alaska, if you are in Hawaii, if you're in Maine, or if you are in Florida, or anywhere in the 48 middle United States, we need you. We need your opinions. We need you to share your comments. And most importantly, if you see it on the rebroadcast, like it and share it. And that's my story, Dean Packard. What do you think about that?
Josh Dowad, great to see you, my friend. It's Sunday evening, and again, we've been doing this for a long time. And Sunday evening's all about getting a little bit better together. My name is Dean Packard, and I am the principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts. And alongside me, I do have Josh and co-founder Chris Starcheski, who's not here tonight again, still on that sabbatical of family leave. And we want to give him a quick shout out because I know he'll be back with us eventually. There's no doubt about that. But like I said, Josh, Sunday nights are all about just getting a little bit better, not only for our kids, but for each other. I mean, in this business, it's not easy. We want to make sure that we're bringing tools to educators around the country to let them know that you're not in this alone. And there are a lot of individuals out there who want to, give their knowledge and give their toolbox directly to you. So, and we're not going to disappoint tonight. I mean, we have Josh Stamper coming on with us, and he's been on before. I can't wait to catch up to see what he's been doing, the great things he's been doing with Teach Better team. And, you said earlier, an author, he was involved heavily within his school, and we had a little bit of talk in the pregame about that. And we see that starting to shift a little bit for him. But you know what? It's always great to have somebody like Josh back on our show. How was your day, man? All good?
Good. Went to his house today. Went to the gym. I'm trying to keep up with you, bro. I'm trying to do those squats, those benches.
Look at, man. You can't. You can't.
Keep up with you, man.
Come on.
At your age, I know it's not that easy, but you know
what? Yeah. 6 foot 203 reps. Okay, no problem with that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Shrinking. I used to be 6'2". It used to be.
Well, you know what? You look great for 105.
55, man. You're killing me.
You're
just killing me. Hey, stop talking about us. Josh Stamper's in the house. Come on, let's get him in here. Here he is right now. Josh Stamper, welcome back to Unlock the Middle. How are you, my friend?
Oh, Dean, wonderful. 6'2". That sounds like my height. Minus a few inches.
Used to be 6'2". Used to, okay? Gravity has pushed downward a little bit. So now 5'11" and 3/4, and on my tippy toes 6 feet. So it's all good. How have you been, my friend? Great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you. And thank you so much for having me back on this wonderful show. And yeah, life is good. Like you said, I get to work with the Teach Better team every single day, which has definitely been a transition. I made that switch over the summer. I was a assistant principal for 9 years prior. And man, now I get to work from home with my amazing 6 kids around every single day and get to travel and work with schools as the training and development specialist with the team. So yeah, it's been crazy, but awesome year.
You got me. I'm lost on the 6 kids. I used to watch that show called The Brady Bunch, that mixed family of 6. And I said, how did they ever do it? But to have 6 of your own, God bless you guys. That's great. That's fantastic. Nothing better than a big family. And, Josh, we were lucky enough to have you on when we first started off Unlock the Middle. Long time ago. I had to go back and look at the episodes. You were in the top 25, I think, and right out of the gate. And a lot has happened since then. So for the audience out there who don't know who Josh Stamper is, let's take this back a little bit. Let's talk about the origins, where you're from, how you came up through education, and kind of the journey to led you to the Teach Better team and what you're doing today.
Yeah, so my journey started in Minnesota. I grew up there, and I was a graphic designer out of college, and the economy totally shifted and tanked, and so I had to find a new gig. And so I talked with my wonderful wife, and she was like, you know what, you need to go where your passions lie. And so I decided art and soccer or coaching was where I wanted to go. So I went back to school at Bethel University and got my teaching license through them and started to be a paraprofessional with special education while I was doing classes, and then I was coaching at night. And then from there, I was looking for a job, and there wasn't really anything in Minnesota. It was like half-time and, off cart to teach art. And so we were looking at other states. My wife's family was here in Texas. And so they were like, you know what, the economy is booming down here and they're looking for teachers. Why don't you fly down? And sure enough, we flew down, and both my wife and I got jobs immediately. And so we packed up everybody, which wasn't much. It was just my daughter at the time. And we moved down to Frisco, Texas. And so we've been here ever since. I've been an art teacher, a coach. Then I got to move into the Dean of Students role and then assistant principal the following year. And then, like I said, I was assistant principal for 8 years after that and absolutely loved it. I've always done middle school, and man, it's been such a crazy journey. And with that, I started a podcast, Aspire to Lead, and been doing that for almost 5 years now. I wrote a book with the same title, Aspire to Lead, and then with all of the social media, posts and conferences and whatnot, I got connected with Jeff Gargas, who's the CEO of Teach Better, and just had a wonderful relationship with him. I got a chance to work part-time with them, building the Teach Better podcast network. We have 42 different podcasts on there now. And through that relationship, I got to switch over and now focus purely on the Teach Better team as the training and development specialist, and have taken a shift away from the school. Although I get to join many educators and teach and work with them every single day. So it's been quite the journey, and one that I definitely wasn't expecting.
Before I go to Josh Tovar here, that switch and leaving something that you're somewhat comfortable with to take that risk to go to that next level, not everybody can do that, Josh. And, when you stop and think about that, kudos to you, because nothing good ever comes if you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone and try something different. So talk about how that went for you and how it's going for you. I shouldn't say how it went, past tense. I apologize.
No, it's going wonderful, but that is a big piece of it, is just that mindset, right? And I feel like that's something that we need to prepare ourselves in every single part of our journey, right? When I was going from graphic design to a teacher, I had to kind of have a leap of faith. When I was a paraprofessional, I didn't know anything about special education, and I had to, really put myself on the line and say, I'm vulnerable. I'm just here to learn. I want to be an educator someday, and I want to get that experience. And, I feel like I really did that in everything that I did. Was just being honest with my knowledge and just wanting to grow and trying to tap into whoever I possibly could, no matter what my title was, and know that I had value. And I just needed to, show what I could do with whatever it was, whatever position. And for me, I always longed to do something more. And so I continued to, try to feed into my passions, try to find new projects, get experience in different ways. And from that, I've got to do a lot of different things that I never anticipated.
Well, Teach Better is a juggernaut, so you landed in a great place. A lot of growth opportunities there. There's no doubt about it. So thanks so much for sharing that. Josh, you're up.
Hey, Josh, tocayos, they say here with our Hispanics, people with the same name. That's your Hispanic lesson of the day, Dean, in Massachusetts. Tocayo, someone that's called the same name. Tocayo.
Oh, I'll work on my.
We'll work on that later on. I'll give you some stuff later. All right, so here we go. Hey, you know what? We're all getting to this field for one reason or the other. And that's the beautiful thing, like I always talk about the pop in the eyes. We always get motivated to get to that point with our kids, with your soccer players, whatever it might be, that whole moment. But you know what? You, at that moment that you see that pop in the eyes, you inspired those kids, right? Those athletes. Now I'm going to ask you, Josh, who does that for you? Who is your role model? Who inspires you, brother?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, Todd Neslony, I'll throw him out. He was a huge inspiration for just taking the leap out of just my comfort zone. And, he gave me the first chance to write a blog for the Kids Deserve It website and be on a podcast for the first time and just do a lot of different things to help myself, grow as a leader. Because I think for myself at the time when I was an administrator, I was really trying to focus on the campus, and I was not really expanding my learning beyond the walls of the campus. And so, he gave me this whole different world of Twitter and Instagram and social media just in general, looking at podcasts, books, and, conferences, all these different avenues to really expand. And because of that, that's honestly where the podcast came from, was really just having an opportunity to visit his campus and see behind the scenes as him and his co-author of Kids Deserve It, do their YouTube video. And I just asked a million questions, and he just, gave me a lot of support, gave me a lot of advice to do different projects. And so, I think everyone needs that. They need a cheerleader or someone to expand their horizons in some way. And a lot of times you may not find that on your campus. And so he just opened my eyes to a whole new world out there of educators across the country. And it's so easy now to just connect and plug in to someone. And, now some of my greatest friends that I have are through social media. I've never met them in person, but I have conversations with them all the time, either on DM or Voxer or, just on the phone. So it's just, kudos to Todd for, believing in me and giving me those opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm circling back here for a second. We touched upon this a little bit, but when you step out of your comfort zone, you got to be willing to take that risk. There's no doubt about that. But what steps do you think that educators in general need to take to activate the journey in education? I mean, what do you see? How do you see that? What does that look like from your lens?
For sure. So when I was an administrator, a lot of times people come into my office and they'd be like, you know what, I really want to become a leader someday. And they would have an initial plan. However, that initial launch point, right, that activation was a missing component. And a lot of times I wouldn't see that person for months on end, and I'd have to come check on them and be like, hey, what are we doing to get that experience that you need to become a leader on the campus? And so I think a lot of folks get in the way of themselves. And there's a lot of things that might happen. It might be self-doubt. It might be, I don't have a formal title. So where's my role on the campus? But I always tell them, like, you gotta step out. You gotta go ask for opportunities. And that's the activation piece of your journey. You gotta make sure that, you knock on someone's door. So for like myself, I was an art teacher and I had to figure out, like, what does that look like on my campus to be able to lead? And so I went to my assistant principal. I knocked on the door constantly. I was in the front office all the time asking, what can I do? Can I just shadow you? Can I go and, be a part of this meeting? And so sometimes it was yes, sometimes it was no, but I was always seeking for those opportunities. And a lot of times folks just sit back and expect those experiences to come to themselves. And that's not how we need to do that in education. We gotta go out there and activate that journey by seeking and asking for those opportunities.
I love that. You got to dig. You got to dig. I love it. Dr. Tova.
All right. Well, but you see, you throw me for a loop, man.
Hey, I caught you on your heels.
Yeah, I got you.
Never do that, man.
Let me ask you something. How can educators develop their different leadership styles to help out their learning community, and specifically how they look at the campus? So here you have somebody yourself that was not part of the education field. Then you came into it, and you had a lens to support kids both in the art classroom, but also out in the field. Mm-hmm. So how does that, what do you envision for somebody else out there to have that leadership lens?
Yeah, I think for myself, I was pretty laissez-faire when I came in because I was, as an art teacher, you could probably determine what my classroom looked like. I had rules and regulations. However, I really wanted to foster that creativity. And so my classroom looked pretty loose in comparison to other folks. So people would come in and be like, oh, he's pretty chill and whatnot. So they didn't know how that was going to translate as a school leader. But then, when I started coaching, as you both know, as a coach, that leadership style has to be different because, I had 80 to 100 young middle school boys that I had to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to in the locker room, on the field. And so, it's a little bit different style that was needed in that environment. And so then when I became an administrator, I also had to learn. So for myself, thankfully, I had, support from my admin, and I got a chance to really observe and experience them in different circumstances. So, they led differently when they were talking with just students, and maybe it was a different style when they're talking with parents, and a different style when they're talking with a teacher one-on-one versus the whole staff in a staff meeting. And so, I got to really hone in on my skills by observing and saying, okay, this is something that I could see myself taking on as a certain communication style, or seeing myself handle the circumstance the same. Or it might've been something like, oh, you know what? I don't want to lead in that way. I don't want to, come across as a leader like this person. So, I think because I got to experience so much, because I got to shadow, because I had that support and those conversations in, one-on-one and that reflection time, I got to kind of pick and choose what was going to fit me in each one of those situations. Because I think, leadership, you got to put different hats on in different circumstances. And you're not going to get that unless you experience it yourself.
So my question here now is when you're talking about having a vision for mentorship, and I love what you said earlier that you were digging, you were asking to put yourself in a position to be uncomfortable, so to speak, to learn.
Yeah,
And anybody, I don't care if you're in a classroom, if you're in administration, or what your role is, making yourself uncomfortable is the way that you become better at what you do. Let's talk about mentorship and some of the mentorship strategies that you think are the most successful for others to be successful, Josh.
for sure. So thankfully, I had a lot of different mentors, and the reason I had those was because I went and I met with every single one of them and asked specifically, "Can you mentor me as I am an aspiring leader?" And I wouldn't have had those opportunities unless I had those conversations. So every principal I had, every assistant principal, because you can have multiple mentors. You don't have to have just one. I know that's a misconception, but I went to all those different folks and asked them for opportunities to shadow, for opportunities to go in and to talk with them and to learn. And some of that was even like role playing, like, hey, I've got this really uncomfortable conversation I need to have with a parent. I've never done that before in this situation. Can I, pretend to be the administrator in this moment and you as the parent, and let's work through this and you tell me what I've done wrong or how you would do it differently. And so, for mentorship, I had folks that were, the veteran leader where they had been doing it for 30 years. They've seen it all. I had some that were, the mentor that was just on fire, who was young and energetic and was ready to take on the world. And so as they were learning, they were allowing me to be side by side in that learning experience. I had one that was really more strategic. So he was looking at, okay, how can I move, this mentee, which was myself, into an administrative role as soon as possible. What are some things that you can do on the campus, but then also what are some things that you can do at the district level to highlight all the things that you're doing on the campus? Because it's great that you're doing things on the campus, but if the people that make the decisions don't know you're doing it, then it doesn't really matter, right? So how are we going to invite them? How are we going to get in their ear to let them know that you're doing great things? So, because I had all these different folks that I had as mentors, then I got to learn even quicker because I was given more opportunity.
Now, I'm just going to take that one step further. How did you know? I mean, how did you start feeling when you started to build your own, we'll call that gravitational movement? I mean, obviously, you start putting yourself in those positions, you begin to get more confidence, you
Mhm.
start building your own capacity. What did that feel like for you, Josh? I mean, you've stepped away from the leadership role now in a public school to take on a grander scope of something. But you personally, how did it feel when you started to build your own confidence?
Yeah, I think confidence was that. I mean, I had a lot of self-doubt at first, but the more opportunity and the more that people were feeding into me, I realized that, that was giving me confidence because, I admire these folks, and for them to give me their time and to give me those experiences and those opportunities, I felt honored and I wanted to do something with that. And so I didn't want to disappoint and I wanted to give it my all. Plus, I'm super passionate. I'm super like on fire to advance and do good things. Like I wanted to move up as quickly as possible. I don't, that's just, maybe that's the athlete in me. I'm just a competitor. So like, I just wanted to make sure that, I was doing everything correctly and to show that I was, able to do that position. Because like I said before, as an art teacher, I felt like there was a stigma that I really wanted to beat. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood it didn't matter where you were on the campus, you're a leader, and that you could rise up to be an administrator someday. And so thankfully, because of the experiences that I was given and some of the data that I was able to like construct and the programs that I built, I was able to show the district that I was capable. And, thankfully I was moved up and promoted. So, for myself, each little win that I got and the more conversations and the more opportunities that they provided gave me confidence. And yeah, I was on fire. I felt like I was invincible and I couldn't be stopped. And maybe that was just me being young and stupid, but that's how I felt in the moment.
Well, you definitely don't have a stationary mindset, which is good. And I'll tell you what, that'll bode well for both you and your family and your educational journey as you continue to move forward. So great stuff right there. JT.
Hey, you know what, Josh? There's this period, like right before Christmas and right now. There's these two dark periods for campuses where you've got the robot from Lost in Space, B9, and he's yelling, "Danger, Will Robinson," because everyone is at a watch out what's going on, right? It's
Yeah.
challenging times, state test, vacation, everything, the gap that's still being addressed by our system in the United States. You know, you got Robot B9 there. Danger, danger, danger. How can we persevere through these challenging times? At different levels, obviously, the custodian is taking care of TikTok challenges,
Right.
along with the cafeteria members. We've got the cross guard, Robot B9, they're not listening to him or her walking across the so you got everybody. I could mention the bus driver, I could mention the team member in the classroom with chemistry. How can we face this adversity during all these challenging times and still maintain sanity?
Yeah, for myself, I think that's a great question. I always lean on other people because, I felt like I was on an island sometimes as administrator, and I was trying to solve the world's problem by myself. And so what I learned, and I already mentioned Todd, but like that network of folks to lean on, because everyone is going through the exact same thing, especially right now. And just to talk it out, to reflect about what's going on. Like you mentioned the TikTok challenge, right? I had to deal with that with the bathrooms and whatnot. So that was new territory for myself, but everyone else in the country was going through the exact same thing. So I was able to bounce ideas off of someone else, and I might be stealing something from Kansas City or California or whatnot because they were going through something similar and they were finding success in it. And so why wouldn't I try to implement that also? And to be able to collaborate in that way is so powerful and allowed me to feel like, okay, I'm not in this alone. I can do this because someone else is doing it also. And, obviously the Teach Twitter team has so many different communities that you can tap into. I built a community even like on Voxer for aspiring leaders, to throw something out in there and then have multiple responses come back of how people are taking control of this situation, or maybe they're feeling the same way, maybe it's depression or anxiety or something like that, and how they're working through that. I think for an admin, especially, I know this, and maybe this is just all educators, sometimes we just feel like, oh, this is my problem. I'm the only one that's handling this. I'm the only one feeling this way. And in fact, that's not true. There's so many educators that are feeling the exact same way, and they want someone to talk it out with. And so my advice for that is, yes, perseverance is a virtue you have to have. It's something that, there's a character piece that you have to dig down deep, especially when you fail, to get back up. But it's so much easier to get back up when there's someone else helping you, So what is your community? What does that look like? And how are you reaching out to other educators to help you through struggling times?
Josh, I'm listening to you right here, and I've been in administration now for 20 years. So in the same building, which is really a long time to be in the same place, and 15 of which being a principal and 5 being an assistant principal. So, what I want to ask you about is creating and developing your identity. I'm going to be very honest with you, and all you people listening out there going into leadership roles. Identity takes time in leadership because you go through a myriad of stages. I can recall when I first started, I wanted to be an alpha leader. I wanted everything to go through me. I thought everything had my fingerprint on it, which it does. Ultimately, it does. But what I neglected to understand is I forgot the importance of empowerment of others to bring out the best in them. Because if I did that, I would have had a much easier job. But I'm going to kick it to you for a second and talk about how does a person in leadership create that identity, and what does that look like, and how long does it take? I'm still learning. I'm a better leader today than I ever was 20 years ago because I've made my mistakes.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to kick it to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Dean, I think that's such a great point. I wrote about this in my book, and really all of these components, right? But identity was a really important piece because I found this when I was a dean of students. I came in thinking I was Superman. You come in, you think I can solve all the problems of this community and these students and these teachers. And what I did was I allowed everyone to put their baggage on top of me, and I tried to take on every single problem, and felt like I could handle, finding every solution by myself. And so in that, though, I found burnout very quickly. I was working insane hours. I was having expectations on myself that was also reflecting back on the staff of like, and I'm sending emails on weekends and late at night. So they knew that I was working on things when I probably should have been hanging out with my family. But with that, what happened was I didn't have identity of myself. Like I didn't work through my own values, my own beliefs. What I was doing was I was working on what they thought I should be. And so what was happening was I was I was almost like two-faced, right? Like I was an admin and trying to be an admin that I really wasn't as a person. I was putting on this mask. And so about halfway, maybe 75% into the year, I realized that this just couldn't happen anymore, because either two things was going to happen. I was going to leave the profession altogether, which I definitely thought about in that year, or I was going to change my leadership and, one, give up some things, but two, then, take the values on as myself and project that to the staff. So one of the big things was like student discipline. As a dean of students, that's what we do on that role, is to do all of the student discipline for the campus. And when I had 1,300 students, you can imagine, in a Title I school, the amount of work that was required of myself every single day. So for myself, I was like, okay, the things that were projected from the staff of what they wanted to be done in regards to student discipline isn't what I truly believe for myself. And I was implementing that plan. So like, what am I going to do to make it so it's filtered and funneled through my belief systems and my values to change and make it so that it was something that was actually beneficial for the students, for the teachers, and for the community. And so unfortunately, for that school year, it was really, really late when I started making those changes. But I felt so much better as a leader because, one, we were starting to see changes in the student behavior and the discipline plan. But two, I felt so much better about myself because I wasn't living through a lie. I wasn't going through someone else's lens of what that leader should be in that position. I actually got to, go through and create procedures and plans and programs that were things that I was passionate about and things that I believed in and things that I valued.
The one thing that you just said there in reflection, that self-reflection piece, as any aspiring leader or leader, is vitally important, because if you don't stop and take your week and look backwards, look in the rearview mirror and say, what did I do? How could I have done this better? Where's my opportunity for growth? How do I build my own capacity? Especially when you're sitting at the top, maybe being a principal, or, I even say go to the top being a superintendent. You have nobody there that's going to fill you in anymore. You have to be making the right moves. So being self-reflective and always understanding that people come first. I love what Chris used to say, we tackle the problems, we're hard on the issues and soft on people. And if you remember that from a leadership role, you're always going to have that buy-in from the people around you. And it's such an important factor for being a really good leader.
So Josh, let's dive into that part of self-reflection in regards to the classroom level, administrative level. What does that look like? Besides being at the gym in the morning and getting the stress out of your head, or taking a walk with your family or your child or whoever afterwards, how can someone self-reflect on their process? How can someone self-reflect on the strategies in and out of the classroom? Because like you said, you were ready to tap out. You were done with a liquid soap in the bathroom. You were done with that kind of stuff, right? So, so you got to figure out, how can I become a better version of myself? What are some of these strategies that can be implemented by different people from Iowa to North Dakota, South Dakota, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's so important that reflection process, and Dean, you said it too, is vital, because we make thousands of decisions as educators, not even just leaders, but probably even more so as admin. And so if we don't actually take time to reflect on how we handle those really adverse situations, then how are we going to better ourselves? And so I had, thankfully, a long drive from my house to work, and gave me a lot of time to reflect. And so, with, like I said, I have a lot of kids. So when I get home, I have to put that dad hat on, and not a lot of reflection happens during that time, because, I'm just helping manage the house. But, that was time where I could shut off the radio. I could just have silence and just drive home and reflect on the practices and the decisions that I made for that day. And I felt like that was such a vital time for myself. And I really, truly missed it, especially when I moved districts and my commute got really, really short, because that was a time that I could really hone in on the decisions. And especially as a young leader, I made so many mistakes, so many mistakes. And just being honest about that, like, okay, you know what, that didn't work out the way I thought. I really made a poor choice in my communication, or maybe it was like, you know what, I was really demanding of that teacher, and I probably should have handled it different. They reacted in a really negative way. Like, how am I going to fix it for tomorrow? Things like that. So reflection is so important that we really need to find time. And so if you don't have a commute, for myself, I had to then decide, okay, I'm going to go in early every single morning when nobody else is on the campus, and I'm going to set aside a certain amount of time. So it was probably 15 to 20 minutes of sitting down and reflecting on the day prior to then say, okay, how am I going to build out my plan for today? If is it something that needs to be rectified, or if maybe it's a new program or something that needs to be modified, like this is my time that in silence really is so important, because in our world, especially our phone too, like there's so many distractions that get in the way. And if we don't put importance on it and we don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. So, reflection is something that I value. I still do it to this day. And it's something that I build into my daily routine. And so like you said, Josh, it could be a lot of different ways. So you can go for a walk. That's usually actually how I reflect now is, I go on a walk where it's peaceful and it's in nature and it's fresh air and I get some exercise to activate my brain. And then I can kind of focus on, okay, what are some things that I did that need to be modified? What did I do well? What did I not, didn't go so well? So even in the role right now with Teach Better, I still take some time to reflect.
And I don't think you're ever going to stop doing that, because I think that, like you said, that's a vital piece of you and why you are as successful as you are right now. So good stuff right there. Now, moving on to the next thing we're talking about, executing to level up. Okay. I'm thinking about what that means in the context of leadership. Okay. Because I'm going to sit back for a second, put on my seatbelt and listen to your definition of what that actually means. Go ahead.
Sure. So like in the book, Aspire Lead is really a blueprint to kind of help aspiring leaders to level up and get to that next level. And that's, for myself, I was thinking like, man, it would have been really nice to get someone else's perspective and failures to really kind of navigate through that. Because like I said, not only as a dean of students, but as a teacher trying to get into administration, I messed up all the time. So that I was very transparent in the book, but the execution chapter is really about like how to go through that interview process. Like what do you need for your resume and experiences, and really working through that. And so that interview process specifically, like I went into the first interview and I did a poor job. I'll be very transparent here on this interview. It was a lot of speaking of what I would do versus what I did. And so that huge lesson is something I wrote about, and just executing and not trying to make stuff up or trying to say, as an administrator, this is what I would do, but, trying to really take time to list all the things that you have had an opportunity to experience and speak on that. And so once I did it the second time, and that's how life is, right? I mean, after you do it once, you learn from that experience, you reflect, right? And then you move on and you do a better job the next time. And that's exactly what happened for myself. And so the execute component is to really just like focus on like how to get to that admin role, or, if you want to be a counselor or whatever the next promotion is, these are the steps that can be done to make that happen.
And I'm just going to take that one step further, if I could, leveling up. And I've gone through a series of interviews, and actually, the older I've gotten, the more I love to sit down and have conversations with people. Interviews are fantastic. I will go through them all the time. Even if I don't want a job, I'd love to just see how I can handle the conversation in a room. And I think it's a knack that you get, and you acquire that over time. And I love that you were honest and said that you kind of bombed your first interview that you went through. I think we all have. That's being transparent. But there is a skill set to that. And as you think about it from your lens, like what are a couple of characteristics that you could take into an interview that would help you have a better chance of being the most or the best version of you to your audience? What would you say? Like, what would you think?
Yeah, I think practice is one. Like for myself, I kind of shied away from having the opportunity to sit down with other administrators and kind of go through a mock interview. Yep. I was very prideful. I was like, oh no, I got this, right? And little did I realize that when you get in that room with a bunch of higher admin, that just the nerves that occur. Sure. And so for myself, after I bombed it, I did take advantage of sitting down and having that mock interview to work through the answers, because like you said, it is a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation, but there's also a communication style that needs to occur, because it's timed and you got to make sure that you're efficient with your responses, and you need to make sure that you have those stories and those experiences that you actually have to work through. And so to match those up, So there is kind of a gamemanship to it.
There is, I
And
agree.
I didn't realize that at the time, but after going through it and the first time and doing the mock interview, I think that really helped. The other piece for me that calmed my nerves was, they ask you, hey, do you want a glass of water? It's something so simple. The first interview, I denied it. The second time I took it. And guess what? Every time I needed to take a breath, I would just take a sip of water and it calmed me down. And it was something so simple, but it was a strategy that was so effective. And literally, like before every question, they would ask me the question. I'd pause, I'd take a drink of water. It also gave me an opportunity to think about my response and the story and the things that I wanted to talk about that matched up. So, it small things like that, being personable and looking at the person. I think for myself, like I said, when I realized how I was speaking to the question, and now I was able to actually talk about what I did. I thought every response was just so much more powerful and had weight behind it. And it was like night and day between my first interview versus my second.
In 2 minutes, if you really calculate and think about the question, you can provide substance that meets a rubric in any interview. If you
Yep.
stop and take a breath and just take your time to work through it. And again, I've been through a series of superintendent interviews. That's exactly what they're looking for. They're not looking for fluff. They don't want anything additionally to that. They just want to know what you know and how you can apply it to that type of situation. Great
Totally.
points, man. Excellent points.
And with this whole situation of the reflection, being yourself, taking time to ponder. It's often said that we're not in the English business, we're not in the math business, we're not in the science business, we're in the people business. So, as leaders, how do we take this time to lead with empathy, with love, compassion? How do we bring that out? Because, like, I think Dean said it, and I mean, all of us. I'm the first one to say it also. When you hold that burden of sitting in the chair of alpha and omega, all the positive and not positive going through there, it's kind of hard not to be always on top of the situation. But we're dealing with people, we need to entrust them with what they bring to the table, and also caring and loving them to fall forward in case they do have a mishap, whatever it might be. So how would you give that brand new administrator that just got a master's, that walked the stage and is ready to become an administrator? What do you tell them, Josh, about leading with empathy, with love, with compassion, with entrusting on those around them?
Yeah, I love the question. So for myself, I thought leadership was about compliance when I first started as a young leader. And what I realized was I was in a community that just needed love and they needed support and they needed so many different resources. And I just wasn't at the time equipped for that because I didn't know what was needed. And so, for myself, I was talking about those values that I wasn't living on. And, that empathy piece, I was learning that these kids, they just wanted to be able to be loved and to survive, right? They didn't know if they were going to have food. The only time they ate was at school, and they never saw their parents because their parents were working like 3 jobs. And, there were things going on in the apartment complex that, there's fights and there were drugs and there were all these different things that were getting in the way of their success. And then I was coming down on them and I was throwing them in ISS or throwing them back into the community with OSS. And I was just so frustrated because the system that was in place wasn't really helping them to be the best version of themselves. And so that's when I, was going through foster care training, and we were learning with TCU about, with Dr. Purvis, of just the opportunity to, help kids through trauma, through different practices similar to restorative practices. And that's actually why I landed on restorative practices. And so, with that, I found empathy and different creative ways to allow the student to, one, own their decision making and the poor decisions that they made, but then also a creative way of how they can restore the relationship or what was broken in that situation. And once I started doing that, that's when I started to see a shift in our students on their behavior, and we started to not see the repeat offenses that we did before, where, when I was doing ISS and OSS, I was actually seeing the behavior tenfold and way worse. And so restorative practices was a huge piece with that. But then also I want to speak on, as an administrator to teachers, I was looking at the compliance piece. And when I started to make that shift with students, I also made the shift with the teachers and started to realize that they were going through a lot of stuff too. And so, the empathy of, okay, a lot of our teachers are going through really tough situations, and it may not look like it. They may be putting on that smile, and go in front of students. But, some of the behaviors that we see with our students is because of the experiences and the trauma that they have. And the same can be said from our teachers. I was, having a conversation with a teacher about some of the things that they weren't getting done. And then it started to come out, okay, maybe they were having a divorce or their spouse lost a job or, fill in the blank. And then you have the pandemic and all of that going on. There's a lot of people having health issues. So, I just needed to start to kind of pull back, put on a little bit of grace, and figure out what's the true issue. Because a lot of times it's super deep that we don't know about, and the behavior that we see is actually manifesting from something else. And so it's not about them being a bad student or a bad teacher, but for myself as an administrator, I had to learn, okay, I need to figure out really what's going on behind the scenes, so then I can help in that situation and provide the support needed for them to be successful.
Thank you. Again, thank you for saying that. Those are some real ground level pillars of what leadership is all about, and there's no doubt. So Aspire to Lead, not only writing the book, but also starting your own podcast, to put the two of them together, taking it from the level of I don't want to say just being a dean of students or just being the person in charge of discipline in the school, because that in itself is a 24/7 job. It comes with you, because when you're in charge of culture, every little thing that happens in that school is resonating in your mind. But for you to have the wherewithal to be able to write that book, to get on and do podcasts, you're showing that you are in that growth mindset stage and just beginning to take off. So I hope you continue doing that. Do you have a copy of your book that you can hold up right now? Show that to everybody out there. Aspire to Lead, right there. That is the beginning stages of administration leadership 101, to be able to go back, reference an opportunity to sift through the book and just find all the things that could just help you stop and reflect before you make your decisions. Where can they find that book, Josh?
Yeah, so it's everywhere, man. You can find it on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble. Of course, EduMatch is the publishing company, so if you go to their website, you can find it there also. But to speak on what you're talking about, Dean, there are reflective questions at the end of every chapter too for that reflection process, because I really do think that it's so important for any aspiring or current leader.
Yep. And again, what a great way just to checks and balances about leadership and why it's so important to be able to have that ground zero opportunity. I'm going to just, before we leave here, talk a little bit about your new position, what it means, what it's all about. I think people out there need to know what Josh Stamper is going to be doing in the next round of his career here. What does that look like?
Well, that's funny, Dean, because I asked my wife what I did, and she couldn't even tell me. So that's how insane my job is right now.
All right. So wide barriers. So talk about it.
No, I am the training development specialist, but that's a fancy way of saying that I have my hands in a lot of different components. So I work on courses for the Teach Better team. I go live with them, not every week, but I jump in, sometimes on Wednesday mornings or on Sundays. We do a lot of training with schools, of course, like I said. So we travel all over the country and work with schools on the GRID method or assessment. Of course, I love talking on restorative practices and trauma-informed care. So that's something I talk with a lot of districts about. But then also our communities. Like I said, I have the podcast network, but we also have some other different communities with the ambassadors or our bloggers, our speakers. There's a lot of different folks that we support in these communities, because like I said before, we can't do this alone, and we got to lean on each other to become the best version. And so that's what Teacher Better is all about. So yeah, I do a lot of different things for the team. I do design work. I work on their swag. There's a lot of things that I have my hands in, but that's what I love, right? It's never a dull day, and I love having different projects, and that's why I gravitate to the team, because there is that support piece of just trying to make everyone better every single day.
There it is. There's leadership right there. Make everybody a little better each and every day. There it is. How simple is that? What do you think of that, Josh? Tovar.
Great job there, Josh. Awesome. Just dropping them bombs all over. Thank you for being here tonight. But most importantly, that knowledge does not stop. We have office hours. Dean Packard, office hours. What day is that, Dean Packard?
Oh, I'm going to say it's Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
A 20-minute problem-solving show that actual events had happened before. So join us. Let us know what's going to happen. What would you have done with that cheerleading mom? We don't know. So join us on Tuesday and let us know. Thank you, Josh, for being here and the flagship show of Unlock the Middle.
Well, okay. Is that my cue to say good night, everybody? Is that what you're trying to do? Hey, Josh Stamper, thank you so much. You've been on twice. I'm going to have you on again and again and again. Can't wait to see where your career takes you. Teach Better is just such a, like I said, a big juggernaut. Lots of room for you to grow. And we've met some great individuals who are associated with the Teach Better team. And every time I get a chance to speak to one, I feel a little bit better about who I am and what I'm doing, because you guys are carrying a very big torch. For all you guys out there, Josh, last 30 seconds, anything you want to say?
Oh, I just appreciate you guys so much. Keep doing wonderful and awesome work.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that too. Hold on, everybody. Have a great week. Make sure you don't stop taking care of those kids, because that's what we do, why we do what we do. Again, on behalf of Josh Stamper, Josh Tobar, and Dean Packard, have a great week, everyone.